Hey everybody, welcome back to Play Casket with your host, Parag the Goblin.
And Ghost, your co-host.
And this week, it's a good time for summer, so we're going to go ahead and gather around the campfire and tell some spooky stories.
Episode 48, Top Ghost Stories read by Ghosts.
So...
And Chill is still king, I don't care what they say.
So... Today we're just going to kind of share a couple personal stories, and we're also going to read a couple of Reddit stories, like some legacy stories, like some stuff we were digging in the deep archives this time.
Well, to be fair, this stuff's a little more modern. I wish we had like the old stuff, because the old stuff.
I have one of them that actually it's pretty lengthy though, so I'm probably going to stick with just one.
Okay.
I'm already getting choked by the ghost. I don't like it, but then we're gonna go ahead and share our own. So, how shall we start?
Okay. I guess I'll go first.
No, you want to do one of your personal stories?
Yeah.
All right, right on.
So, for the most part, it's not my story, but it's one of my friends from a server, and he was telling me about there's this one city in Mexico where there's I think there used to be prospectors, and the people who used to live there, they would bury their gold. So, if you're fortunate enough, they would tell you where the gold's at. So, people would come there and they would use like metal detectors to try to find the gold. But if you were worthy, you would find gold. But if you weren't meant to find gold, it would turn to either just mud or water. So, people who would like metal detect, they would dig there. They would find a chest and they would open it up and it'd just be muddy water in there.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
So there's a lot. It's just, but people who did deserve it, yeah, they would actually find gold. So
I think that's funny because somebody else probably trolled somebody and just put another case back in there empty and stuff too. When you think about it, like somebody's like, I'm taking my gold with me, but I'm burying my chest. Like, something to that point. I can definitely see that happening. Because I would do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking the gold with me. I don't need a chest for it all. Just put it all in my pants.
But, yeah, and then I guess he said there's also another story where this lady, she got a medium, like, they got a seance to find where the gold is at. And, the ghost told them where it was at, and they were gonna dig it up later. So, the spirit came to her in her dream and said, "You have to share the gold with these people. If you don't, you're gonna lose it. And all you have, like, the ghost said, the spirit said basically, it doesn't matter how much you share, just share the gold. Don't be greedy." So she ignores it. And they go and dig it, and she promised to pay them, but she didn't. So that night, she just ran off with it, and they never heard from her again until a couple months later. Turns out she had cancer, and she wasted all her money getting treatment, and she went broke.
I told you. Yeah, I told you to share. That's some like Aladdin curse bullshit right there.
Yeah, but it's a good lesson though. It's like, just share, even if it's a little bit.
That actually, honestly, that story sounds more of a tall tale, kind of like teach kids a lesson about sharing and such.
Yeah,
I think that one's kind of more of that. But the first story kind of reminds me of one of the stories. There's some videos. There's some spook reporting video groups that covered this one as well. That's somewhere in Mexico. I think it's like Mexico City or something like that, or just off of Mexico City. If you drive down a certain road that somebody died on, and it's not even like a distant road or anything like that. It's like inside an area of a city with a certain dial on your radio. It would dial into some kind of playing of something that was really spooky and has like weird verbiage, voicing and stuff like that, and nobody can really make out what's going on. And it happens any time between like a certain hour on that street. And it supposedly happened right when, around that one time, a woman died or was murdered there.
Oh, yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And it only happens at the time. If you go through in parts of the day, it won't happen.
Yeah, you can hear the siren.
Yeah.
Yeah, when she to come and rescue her. Yeah, that's creepy as hell.
It's very creepy. Like, what the hell? Like, it's different when you're just hearing weird differences and changes. Like, oh yeah, that will probably happen, whatever. But then there's like sirens and stuff too. Like, what the hell's and why only certain parts of the day? That's what it reminds me of. So, but that's some spooky story. That's some good spooky story right there.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and see what Reddit had to give us.
Okay, so I found this creepy one that I would like to read. So hold on to your butts. Right.
Yeah, the flashlight.
Okay, so Majora 420, about a month ago. So here we go. Something invited itself into my house, my friend's home. I've told this story on another subreddit, but when one haunting experience that really freaked me out. When I was younger, I had a next-door neighbor named Lexi, and she was my best friend. Our parents would go on trips on motorcycles, and with each of us, we would camp out one of our houses until they came back. It was normal for us. We never had any paranormal events prior to this specific night. We were sitting in the bedroom talking down what we normally did. We saw a bright light through her window, followed by the sound of motorcycles pulling onto the gravel driveway. We instantly think, okay, our parents forgot something. But before we could even get up to leave the bedroom, we heard knocks and a soft woman's voice say hello. The front door opened. This was a familiar sound because the door scraped against the hardwood flooring. We panicked, thinking there was an intruder at the point because the woman didn't sound like our family. We have very Texan voices. We scattered the house, scared out of our minds, just to find the front door wide open and nobody in the driveway. Nobody was in the house. We finally felt better. We walked back to our bedroom, but before she went to enter, she collapsed onto the floor and started sobbing. I didn't know what was happening. I was scared. And she told me something was tall. I was scared, and she told me something as tall as the door frame was standing in her parents' room. After our parents returned, her family continued to have paranormal activity in their house. They moved out, too.
They also had spooky stuff, so we left. That sounds like the usual, like, average story you hear from, like, somebody who has spooky stuff. Like, nope, I'm going to nope on out of this. Fuck this. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not dealing with somebody else's drama, especially after you're dead. You're dead, dude. Just let it go.
I like this because it's, like, so confusing, and it's like, this is freaky as hell because nothing makes sense.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the whole story was kind of all over the place, too. I think it would do better if she segmented it and stuff, trying to get an idea of the process of the events.
Okay.
But from what we're reading, too, it's just like an ongoing paragraph.
It sounded like it all happened in, like,
all at once, in
within
like
a couple
less than
minutes.
20 minutes. Yeah. I would definitely see that. I could definitely see that. But it makes you wonder, like, why did it start happening? Like, something happened if their parents were out that kind of cursed them or something like that.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. Like, think about that, you know? Somebody's like, hello, and opens the door. There's a woman. Something happened. Like, if this is legit, like, something happened with those parents that they're not talking about. Something to that point, you know what I mean? So, but
give us a follow-up.
Yeah, give us a follow-up. Let us know some other stories. That would be awesome. But I had a personal one, and in fact, actually, it's kind of like a weird collective best of the best type of experience for me, because just recently I went to some house hunting, and we actually ran into one of these houses that were actually on the street that I had a lot of paranormal experiences when I was a kid. Like a lot of like not even just paranormal. We also had like a stalker and stuff too. So in the process of several childhood memories, this area, this park would have some of the most bizarre stuff going on. We had one large family that was living a block away from us that would also go up to this park and fish out like these mutant goldfish. Like somebody's dumping stuff into that lake before, and the goldfish were they're grotesque. They had spines, and you can tell that they used to be goldfish but something messed with them. You know, like something really messed with them. So I got a trait that they're just mutant fish because somebody tossed some toxic waste in it or whatever. Like, it was just a story to kind of justify it, but something was going on with those fish. So that was like some of the weird stuff that was going on at first. But then one time that we were supposed to watch the meteor shower. And the meteor shower, we wanted to go out to a very wide area so we could see a lot of the sky and a lot more, you know, just see a lot more without any canopies of the trees overhead and stuff like that. And while we were watching, a couple of my brothers were kind of messing around, and my mother and I were watching, and we saw like a wisp of clouds that kind of looked like the shape of what you would usually do for like seagulls online, you know, like on a drawing and stuff, like the weird little pseudo sleepy M.
Yeah.
Like, you started seeing that, like, as if it, like, clouds got caught onto something, and we couldn't see what it was. There was no shadows or anything else to kind of discern what it was, but it was, like, moving in a weird zigzag pattern against the wind, against the rest of the clouds and everything. It was going perpendicular to it. And so we were, like, enthralled by this because it was so abnormal, it was so weird, it was so wild. And we couldn't decipher what it was, so we thought at first we thought it was some kind of, you know, just, you know, wind or something like that. But there's things that just moved unnaturally. So we were like, something's controlling whatever this is, and it's like some kind of UFO. So we were watching it, and eventually it just stopped and then took another sharp turn, and it was like so close. Like, we could actually like see the clouds that was kind of caught in the front of it just kind of break away a bit, and we could see the particles just kind of dissipating from it. So it was relatively close because that's hard to see of a cloud so high up, you know. So we freaked out and we decided to get going because that was not something we were supposed to get dealing with. And you know, we ended up getting home, kind of mellowed out. We went out to our own backyard and watched a couple more, you know, falling stars. And that was really it for that. But then we had a weird, creepy dude that would stalk a lot of the kids during the early morning hours and stuff when people would go up to the bus stop and such. And we think it was actually tied to a couple of murders around that time. They would hide kids in the ditch and stuff too. So there's that. I don't know too many details on it, but there was always this weird, creepy dude that was always wearing full black everything. And if there was too many like kids right there, the guy would just talk to us in a friendly way, and it was just really unsettling. And a lot of the kids were like, "Oh, that's weird," and then we would see just a couple kids missing over time and all that, and just like we didn't know what to do about it. We didn't think about much of it because we were kids, you know. Like, oh, he got to play hooky, you know, lucky son of a bitch, but he's dead in a ditch somewhere now because of it, you know. So, you know, hindsight as a kid sucks.
Yeah.
But
well, the creepy part is that like sometimes when you get that gut feeling, yeah, it's probably right.
Okay, so even if you were wrong with the gut feeling, there's a reason why that gut feeling even happens.
Yeah.
Like in like it might not be about that person, it might be about this whole scenario that's being like I don't like where this is going, you know. And like you might meet up with them again, and they're like, oh, it's not that guy. You know, I'm not feeling that threatened or anything. Like there's a reason. Always listen to it. Always listen to it. So there's
a lot
that.
of times it's always usually right too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the capper of this whole story, and this is all happening on the same park, same street and stuff like that, that I found a house that we previewed one day, and we call it the horror house now because that's the only way we can reference it. But this last part that was really creepy to me because this was like the most paranormal, like everything kind of amalgamated into this area type of thing, was one time we were actually playing really late at the park, and we decided to walk home, and we're kind of roughly in our teens, I think about 13, 14 years old, and we start going down, and suddenly, like, I'm kind of trailing behind because I was not popular. My brother was actually more popular, so he had a lot of his friends around, so I kind of distanced myself a bit, and I started noticing a lot of the light around me, like the light sources and stuff like that, started to dim, and I'm like, oh wow, that's weird. And then it started just like everything collectively started to dim, like really dark, like it got so bad that the only light you saw was like the heat from the coils of a lot of the street lamps. And I'm like, this is uncomfortably weird. And I started getting this like chill, like not in danger, like something is very foreboding though, you know? So I turn around and I see this like wispy, like long, cloaky, like there's so many descriptions for it and stuff. Like it was just so weird, and it like moved in a fluid manner, but then like very staccato, and it was just like kind of creeping and dancing around down the street, and like see this like, I wouldn't say it's a skull, but it's a mask. Like I would say it's supposed to represent a skull or something to that point. And it reached out and it like grabs a handle and like pulls in and grabs another bar and kind of like just doing this weird crawl-like manner. And it was just, the only thing that I thought in my head was just fucking run. And so I just take off. I blew past my brother and his friends, like, what are you doing? And I screamed at them, run. And then they're like, oh, and then they panicked and they just started they didn't see anything. They didn't look back. They just like, okay. And they just ran with me.
Yeah. And
I ran all the way back down to the major street we have to cross before I even stopped. So that was several blocks for my tiny ass. And I remember turning back, and I remember seeing it grab a light pole, and just like go down another street. So I was worried that it was going to like cut us off somewhere, because obviously something like that isn't normal, isn't supposed to be normal. It isn't anything else. Like it was terrifying. And in fact, I was just like going off of just the sheer memory of where we're supposed to run, where stuff's supposed to be. I'm thankful I didn't run into anything, you know. And I finally got down to a street that I could see, and we ran down that street. And then once I started catching our breath, we finally crossed the major street. And as we're crossing down and heading down to one of the entryways to our neighborhood, we started hearing several ambulances going down the major street we're going down. And as we were paying attention, it sounded like they went up towards that other neighborhood we just went through. And later that week, we found out somebody had a heart attack and died.
Oh, jeez.
So it was kind of crazy. It wasn't, I thought, like, the more I thought about it, like, obviously it wasn't looking for me. If, you know, whatever I was seeing was what I think it was like the Grim Reaper. But it moved in such, like, intensity. Like, it had the purpose to kind of go to, and it was going that way. It didn't slow down and decide to go somewhere else. It didn't just speed up when I took off. It obviously had a ulterior motive, and we weren't part of it.
Did your brothers ever find out or no?
I explained it to them.
They didn't believe
Like,
it?
they didn't really buy it. They still don't buy it.
Okay.
One of them is kind of like on the fence. Like, he doesn't believe in ghosts, but then weird stuff happens and he starts believing in it again. Then he doesn't, and it's like it's an ongoing thing.
Okay.
But like this whole thing, like this whole story, all this whole history behind this whole park is just. It's like, why don't you just go ahead and move into your childhood home where everybody was murdered in? I'm like, I'm probably going to go ahead and skip on that one, guys, if you don't mind. So, yeah, that was one of my scariest stories I've had, but it was actually kind of interesting that it kind of capped off at the end of there with me as an adult goblin. I'm like, no. Crazy suburban white women do this. I do not. So, yeah, there's that. So, I don't know what to think about that. I still kind of sit there. I'm like, I don't know if that was kind of fate or it's just God making fun of me.
Oh, okay.
It's like, this place is funny, isn't it? No, it isn't. So, but I do have a
Reddit one.
I do have a Reddit story as well. And before I go there, I want to go ahead and break these two parts up a little bit, just to, for a nice segue. I give everybody a heads up. This one's a very lengthy one, and the preface of it is this story's been deleted repeatedly, and people asking for this story repeatedly and such. Like, it's hard to even find the archive for this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it gets deleted all the time. And one of the reasons why people are reasonably considering is because it doxes somebody who owns a particular car, and it has a particular license plate.
Oh yeah.
And I'll break that down in a bit, but I think that's one of the reasons why. So Reddit's not responsible for any of it, but I do think it's kind of interesting that a lot of people just want even the story, and even the story gets deleted. So, even with redacted parts. So I'm just breaking that down. Several of you people who generally follow a lot of spooky stuff probably have heard this story before, but we're going to go ahead and be just one of the thousands upon thousands of channels that read this story. So,
that's a good one though. It's freaky.
It's good. It's really crazy. It is like beyond crazy because like I remember first hearing it from a guy called Ty Knotts, which by the way, I will never be able to make a spooky story sound so sexy like he does. So, if you go to the top 5 unknowns, he does some weird stuff that's like kind of hidden cold cases and stuff now, but his voice is silky smooth. So,
I think I came across it when I was just looking up ghost stories, and it was like always at the top. And I was like, okay, this one's long as hell, but everybody keeps talking about it. I gotta see it. And I read it.
It is a lengthy one, so I'm not going to go into too many details. I'm just going to read the first impressional stats, but then I'll give a lot of people like kind of the heads up on the end of it. But I still think it's a good story to speak in front of this nice little campfire of ours. So, here we go. This has haunted me for a long time. I was about 19 or 20 at the time, and I was living in Savannah, Georgia. As I drank a lot, had a crappy fake ID, and I worked a terrible job as a grunt laborer. The kind where you go to a temporary labor unit until 5 p.m. and drink myself to sleep, only to taking home maybe $60 for the day. I was supposed to go into work this particular morning, but I decided to skip. It's a labor agency, they'll always just find somebody else. I call my girlfriend, I tell her I want to go to the beach, Tybee, and I had already started drinking. She comes over, we hop into my big, ugly van, we pack some rods, and we head to the beach for fishing. I decided to have a drink across from the beach. When we arrived, I decided to have a drink across the beach and in this little bar. This is where the story gets interesting. Shortly after ordering my drink, I get this really weird feeling. I became hyper aware of my surroundings. The door opens and I see this guy walking out of my peripheral vision. There was a seat between me and my girlfriend, but the bar was empty like 9 a.m. and he could have sat anywhere else. Yet he chooses to sit right between her and I. Then he starts doing this thing with his fingers. The bar top was reflective, and he takes his fingers like 2 little legs and just starts walking with them, as if skating with them on top of the counter. This isn't something out of the ordinary, but I did take notice because when I was in school, I did this same thing all the time. I pretended I had a rollerblades on my fingers and I was skating around my desk. I hated school and always was trying to distract myself. So I became kind of mesmerized for that same reason. That's when he looks at me, and in this really kind of Germanic or Nordic accent, he says, I noticed you're a man who pays attention to detail. I'm also a man who pays attention to detail. Now, before I continue, I have to describe this guy. He had the short, spiky hair that was bleached at the tips, kind of like that late 90s style. He had really expensive clothes on, like nice Prada leather jacket, nice designer jeans, really nice boots. He seemed like that kind of gay guy with that awesome fashion sense that seemed very distinctive taste. I always remember this because I think to myself, some weird homeless man crazy couldn't have afforded all those clothes. Anyway, the other thing that stuck out was his eyes. They were like a piercing gray, reminding me of like husky eyes, but his pupils always stayed at this disturbing pinpoint size. They're extremely small, which caused his look to be kind of terrifying. And with his teeth were normal, right? But not at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. They were sharper than they should be, as if they were filed slightly. His hands were normal, but his fingernails were slightly long and pointed, as if he deliberately did this. He kept licking his teeth too, as if he were salivating. The next thing about this guy that You look at him, and everything seems normal, but off at the same time. You're questioning if you're the crazy one thinking this. This guy then begins to start talking about the relationship between me and my girlfriend, but really strangely. He talks about how beautiful she is and how I should pay more attention to her, kind of like I was kind of a dick to her. Shortly after he began talking like this, I had this almost knowing feeling that came over me, like I knew this guy was not a human. I took a look at my girlfriend and say, "You need to leave." She just kind of looks at me like she knows too. Without a word or protest, she gets up quietly and leaves. Later, I learned that she went next door to just get a coffee. That's when this guy literally says to me in the utmost confidence, "You were supposed to go fishing today." He points at the beach across the street. "If you had, I would have drowned you in that ocean." And I shit you not, he fucking hissed. Again, for some reason, this overwhelming calm had come over me. I just ask, "Who are you?" He answers back with a crazy guttural language like "Akhbak," but it was really long, and I just sounded Arabic or Hebrew or something. I just, for some reason, without skipping a beat, and I have no idea why I was so calm about it to this day, ask, "Say it in a way I can understand." He says, "You can call me Jimmy C. I jumped off the San Francisco Bridge years ago, and we've been watching you." From here on out, he never referred to himself as a me or I, but only we. The conversation became something very strange after this. He's saying things like, "We see you taking a bath. We wish we could feel the warmth of the water and the comfort of the steam," and other stuff. He kept buying me drinks too, specifically whiskey sours, as if he had an endless supply of money. He smoked Marlboro ultralight cigarettes. After I don't know for how long, because I lost sense of time, I told him I'm going to leave. I walked next door to get my girlfriend, and she's stone silent. We start driving home. I don't say a word, and then I just ask, Do you know what that was?" And she said to me, "That was a demon." This girl's parents were both scientists, and she was very analytical and completely non-religious. And that was the first thing she said out of her mouth. Now, I didn't say this before because, to me, this is the most important aspect of the story. So I'll say it now. Because of what happened after this, that screwed me up for fucking years. The last thing Jimmy said to me before I left is this: "Look at my car." I look outside. I see a Volkswagen Beetle. It was white. And then, what does the license plate say? He looks at it and literally just says, "Fierce." He looks me dead in the eyes, says, "Next time I see you, I'll be driving a black Mercedes." And the license plate will say, I'm going to redact that just for safety.
Okay.
Stupid, right? That night, I was still calm. I don't know why. I felt that guy on Office Space after his hypnotherapist died in front of him. He was weirdly zen. But my girlfriend started having terrible nightmares of this guy's head just staring at her in her dreams. Weeks went by, and that when the counter started affecting me. I found myself becoming paranoid of everything black, just looking for that black fucking Mercedes. Every black car I saw, I checked if it was a Mercedes, and if it was, I immediately looked at the license plate. I started doing it when I watched TVs and movies as well. I just cannot stop. Now I'm going to fast forward a bit. About 10 years go by. I'm 29, so this just recently. And in silence, when I'm alone, when I'm drinking, I just often think about this encounter. I still look at black Mercedes every time it passes. I'm not so much anxious about it anymore as curious. And I remember that my girlfriend at the time kept a journal. But by now I'm pretty sure that I'm insane, and maybe I was drunk, and maybe I'm not remembering this all correctly. After years, I just tried to find articles of Jimmy C. Nothing came up. Nothing about the suicide either. Yet still I had to know. So last year I tracked down my ex-girlfriend, ended up on bad terms, blah blah blah, and asked if she had the journals. She still does. Sure enough, and it contained even more detail than I remembered, because it had literally written all about the Capri shop right next door right after it happened. And then it goes into a lot of detail. Like this stuff gets into extensive detail. And so he comes to terms like this stuff was actually happened. And he doesn't know what he wants to do, but he's kind of like constantly thinking about it and stuff. And the part that gets me is, of course, that so that license plate, and I'm pretty sure a couple videos I already covered this one before and actually said it. We're going to take the safe route.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure with a good sleuth that everybody is, they will find it.
Yeah. Well, I remember some of the Redditors actually looked it up, and
yep,
that thing's real.
Yeah. So they looked up the license plate, and that's why we're redacting it, because like later on, some people actually look it up, and it is for certain, registered to a black Mercedes.
Yeah.
There was actually a dormant something on it. Like it wasn't registered for a while. Like it was still tied to that car, but it was unregistered or something like that. It wasn't an active registration, and then it went into an active registration and had a oil change exactly 10 years to the dot after the guy said this is what happened at this time. And they're like, whoa. And then I think that's where Reddit had to step in, because it's probably doxing a real person.
Yeah.
So that being said, that's some trippy shit.
So that was the best damn advertisement for a new movie, like
that. Like, well, there's a Netflix series out there right now that's called short. Like, what was it? 3-word short stories or something? 3-sentence short stories or something like that. 2-sentence horror stories. Something like that. Yeah. So Netflix or something to that point is now making like little mini series based off of that. I'm surprised they haven't taken this one and ran with it. Like, but at the same time, like, if this all stuff happened, right? We gotta find out if that dude's still alive.
Yeah.
You know? Like that dude's probably dead by now.
Jimmy C came for him.
Yep. Akbak, whatever you want to talk your weird little tongue thing at me for. So, but yeah, like that one's, I still think about that story to this day. There's only one other one that doesn't, it's not really Reddit, but it was another one of those stories that talked about his dog and him going hunting, and then like his dog becoming this skinwalker and stuff, which was a trippy one too. I just couldn't find it. I don't think it was from Reddit.
Oh, okay.
But those two were the only ones I really think about all the time. Like, those are some really wild stories. Like, even if they're fake, when they're fake, they're kind of wild stories, you know? Yeah. Like, they're told in a way that's believable, because they're not just, and then one day they just happen to do this. Like, it feels like you would talk to somebody normally. Like, this happened, and then of course talk to my ex. Like, it blows my mind, because it feels so natural, even if it's fake. Like, it's just wow.
The amount of detail that they could put into it is when you're like, okay, this is probably real.
Yeah. Like the detail. Well, not a particular set of details. Not like details like, and then this other woman came down and she had a fiery red hair and blah blah blah. I'm like, it's a story then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, like I remember one of the creepier ones I remember was this guy who they had to go in and clean up these like really old buildings for to be presented and be remodeled, and he was telling me about how like he was the early one in, and he had like a bucket of bleach and water, and the person who used to live here smoked a lot, so everything was covered in like a layer of smoke and dust, and it was just him with like, it was absolutely silent, and he could smell the bleach as he was scrubbing away at the paint all by himself. I'm like, yeah, I can see that happening. That's pretty creepy.
Yeah, like the stuff like that sounds more from, it's not like they're trying to narrate another character into the story and stuff like that. Like when it's just about them, and he even foregoes a couple of events, and he's like, you know what, I should probably I'm starting to lose my mind. I'm gonna contact my ex, and he even contacts his ex and posts some of the stuff that the journal said and stuff. And he's like, this just blows my mind, and it's quite interesting, and. Maybe we should do another couple of these one of these days, but these are fun. Yeah. So I'd like to thank you guys all for sticking around and hearing our crazy little stories. And if you like what we do, feel free to hit our like, and we'll see you on the other side. Hey everyone, this is Paraka.
and Ghost.
I would like to say thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you like our content, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share our video with your friends.
You can also follow and support us on other social media such as Minds and Rumble. Links in the description below.